Hey, it's Mr. Leatherwood, and today I'm going to teach you 3 ways to divide, or dividing decimals 3 ways. I'm going to teach you how to do it just with the decimal, so without the decimal, and then a traditional way, the old-fashioned way that I learned how to do it and probably your parents learned how to do it. So I'm going to show you through all 3 ways. So the first way we're going to do it is with the decimal, and let me show you what that looks like. So let's do 1350 divided by 5. Now when I do this, I always estimate first, and so I try to round this to something that would be easy. And so 1350, if I round it to 15 for instance, and did 15 divided by 5, I would know that that's 3. So I know my estimate needs to be, or my final answer needs to be close to 3. That way it takes out any guesswork. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the decimal straight up. Most of these, the ways I do this is I bring the decimal up. Just helps me kind of keep my place value in order. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do 5 into 13 because that's the whole number. And 5 goes into 13 2 times, and that equals 10. So notice I'm going to bring everything down. 2 times 5 is 10. And I keep the same place value, so I'll go all the way over to the hundreds place. Then I subtract. So I have 3 and 5 tenths, or 3 and 50 hundredths. So this is where it gets a little tricky. 5 can't go into 3. So what I try to think of it as is I try to think of this number being 3 and 50 hundredths, or 350 hundredths. So I know that these are hundredths. It makes it easier for me because now I can go, oh, 5 goes into 350 70 times. Because 70 hundredths times 5 would be 3 and 5 tenths. Okay, and that's how I get my final answer. So I like doing it this way. I've noticed lately this is how I most of the times this is how I divide, but let me show you the other ones also. So without a decimal, so let's erase all this. Okay, so let's do it without the decimal. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to erase or get rid of a decimal and bring this decimal up here, and then the other decimal, give me just a second, I'm going to get rid of it. Okay, and you're like, what the heck do you do that for? Well, let me show you. When I do that, it allows me to divide 5 into 1,350. But when I do that, I want to remember that this is 1,350 hundredths. Uh-oh. Not hundreds. That'd be big. Hundredths. And this is going to help me at the end to make sure my decimal point's in the right spot. So then I'm going to divide however I like to divide. I'm a big 7 guy, so I'll try to do it that way. So 5 goes into 135, I don't know, here, I'll do 1,000. So that was times 200. I'm going to subtract just like I normally do. Then I'm going to do, okay, let's do 70. Okay. And then I get 270 when I add these together. But I need it to be 270 hundredths. Okay, 270 hundredths. So when I write it up here, it's going to be 270 hundredths. Because 270 hundredths would be 2 and 7 tenths, or 2 and 70 hundredths. I also remember when I estimated a second ago, 15 divided by 5 equaled 3, and 2 and 7 tenths, or 2 and 70 hundredths, is close to 3, so I know I'm in the right spot. So that's another way. The key here is to make sure that you write this out at the beginning before you get rid of your decimal. So realize that this is 1,350 hundredths. That way when you finally add all this together, you remember that it's out of hundredths. Okay, so that's the trick there. All right, let me show you the last one, the old-fashioned way, the traditional way of doing it. This is how Mom and Dad learned it, and this is how I learned it back in the olden days. Hold on one sec. All right, this is how I learned, but it has in the last few years ended up being my least favorite way because it doesn't really hold on to place value or anything. But doesn't mean it's a bad way, it just means it's not my favorite way anymore. And as you transition into higher math in middle school and high school, this is probably what you'll end up starting to use because it's somewhat of a shortcut method. So the first thing I'm going to do, as we always learn when we were kids, is bring that decimal up. And then I'm going to do traditional division like I would just doing regular division. So a lot of times when we were kids, we would take away this decimal. So very similar to the way I just showed you a second ago. The difference here is when I divide, I'm going to start looking from the left to the right. So 5 can't go into 1, so I would put a 0 here. 5 can go into 13 2 times, so I'd put a 2 and I would bring down the 10, and I would subtract, and then I'd start bringing stuff down. 5 goes into 35 7 times. I would subtract. I have to keep going until I get rid of all these decimals. 5 goes into 0 0 times. So I would get the same answer as we did before, 2 70 hundredths, or 2 7/10. I think when we wrote this problem in class, we were doing money, so it would be $2.70. And again, I tend to use my estimation, and we did this earlier, which is why I didn't write it over here. But again, 3 is really close to 2 7/10, or 2 70 cents, $2.70. So I know that I got it in the right spot. So try these 3 different methods and see how you do. I'll do one more problem for you, and you can see if you do well or not. Try all 3 methods, and then I can show you how to do them. All right? All right, so let's try $60.30 divided amongst 5 people. And if I can fit it on here, I'll show you all the different ways of doing it. Hopefully. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video. You can try all 3 ways if you want and see how you do, or you can try to pick your favorite one already. It's up to you. I'll come back and show you how to do it. Alright, so the first one we're going to do is we're going to do with the decimal. So I'm going to bring that decimal up. I'm going to do 5 into the whole number first. 5 goes into 60 12 times. And that gives us 60. Some decimals left over. When I subtract, I get 30 hundredths. Well, what do we need to multiply to get 30 hundredths times 5? It's going to be 6 hundredths. So I'm going to multiply 6 hundredths times 5, and I get 30 hundredths. So my answer would be 12 6 hundredths. Now I forgot, silly me, I really like to estimate first, and I didn't do that. Silly Mr. Leatherwood. So I would have probably rounded 60 3/10, or $60.30 to $60. And that gets us close to 12. So this is my estimate down here. And so 12 6 hundredths, or $12.06, is definitely close to what my answer should be. Okay, so now let's do it without the decimal. Okay, so I would bring my decimal up, probably, and then I would get rid of this decimal. And tricky part here is being able to write out to the side. So remembering that this was at the hundredths place. Okay, and then I'm going to divide. I like Super 7, so I'm going to bring it down like this. Okay, I would do, oh, I don't know. How about 60, but I want it to be 6,000. So I'm going to multiply by that. That leaves us 30. And I know 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, so I end up getting 1,206. Whoa, that's big. But then I remember it has to be in the hundreds place. So the hundreds place would be right here. So my answer would be 12 and 600ths. Okay, and then we have the traditional way, which is mom and pop's way, right? This is how Mr. Leatherwood was taught when he was a kiddo. First thing I do is I bring out my decimal. 5 goes into 6 one time. Subtract, I get a 1. Bring down the 0. 5 goes into 10 two times, which leaves us 0, but don't forget, you got to keep going until you get rid of all these numbers. 5 goes into 3 0 times. A lot of people will make that mistake there. Then I bring down the 0. 5 goes into 36 times. And I get my same answer of 12 and 600ths. So 3 different ways. You pick what works best for you. We're all going to make some mistakes here and there, but hopefully we get a method that you can be pretty consistent with and do very well with. So mess around with them, and hopefully one of these will help you be successful. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good day.